We don't serve your kind here, girls. The words slice through the busy airport terminal like a blade. Gate agent Karen Mitchell tears two first-class boarding passes in half, while 16-year-old twin sisters Jasmine and Jade Morrison watch in stunned silence. Other passengers pull out their phones, some filming, others pretending not to see. Airport security begins walking toward them with purpose. One twin whispers to her sister, "Should we call Dad?" The other shakes her head with a knowing look. "Not yet. Let's see how far they'll go." The final boarding announcement echoes through the terminal as the twins exchange a glance that suggests they're holding back something powerful. The morning sun streams through the massive windows of Chicago O'Hare International Airport as identical twins Jasmine and Jade Morrison stride through Terminal 3 with the confidence that comes from good upbringing and expensive education. At 16, they carry themselves with poise that turns heads, their designer outfits impeccable, their matching Louis Vuitton luggage rolling smoothly behind them. They're traveling alone to Atlanta to spend summer break with their grandmother, a trip they've made dozens of times before. The girls navigate the crowded terminal with ease, their laughter echoing as they discuss their summer plans and joke about their grandmother's legendary cooking. Lead agent Karen Mitchell stands behind the counter at gate B12, her 45 years weighing heavily on her shoulders, along with the bitterness of a recent divorce and mounting bills. Her eyes narrow as she watches the Morrison twins approach, her internal monologue immediately jumping to ugly conclusions. Those clothes probably cost more than she makes in a month. Where did teenagers like them get money for first-class tickets? Their parents are probably drug dealers, or maybe they're using stolen credit cards. She's seen it all in her 20 years working for the airline. Or at least she thinks she has. The twins reach the counter with bright smiles, handing over their boarding passes and identification with the casual confidence of frequent flyers. Karen examines the documents with excessive scrutiny, holding them up to the light and studying them far longer than necessary. Her behavior draws curious glances from other passengers waiting in the gate area. "How can you afford first-class seats?" she asks bluntly, her tone accusatory rather than conversational. "Where did you get these tickets? Who's paying for this trip?" The twins exchange a quick glance, their smiles faltering slightly as they realize this isn't routine verification. Jasmine, the slightly more outspoken of the two, maintains her composure as she explains they're visiting their grandmother for the summer. Jade adds that their father purchased the tickets for them just as he has many times before. Their polite responses only seem to fuel Karen's suspicion. Behind them, other passengers begin to take notice of the unusual interrogation. Some check their watches impatiently, while others lean in to hear better, sensing drama unfolding. Gate supervisor Derek Williams, a weak-willed man in his 50s who spent his career avoiding confrontation, overhears the commotion from his nearby desk. He glances up from his paperwork, sees the situation developing, but instead of intervening, he chooses to support his employee. He's learned that challenging Karen's decisions leads to arguments he'd rather avoid, especially when she's in one of her moods. His cowardice will prove costly. Karen picks up her phone with a suspicious glint in her eye, announcing she needs to verify the legitimacy of their tickets. Karen returns from her fabricated verification call, her expression grave and self-important. She announces that the tickets appear to be fraudulent and demands additional documentation from the twins. "I'm going to need proof of payment, identification for whoever purchased these tickets, and contact information for verification," she states loudly enough for nearby passengers to hear. Her tone suggests she's uncovered some major conspiracy, rather than harassing two teenagers. Jasmine calmly produces her black American Express card, a piece of plastic that represents more spending power than Karen sees in 6 months. But Karen dismisses it without hesitation. "This could be stolen," she declares, examining the card as if it might burst into flames. When Jade offers to call their father to clear up any confusion, Karen refuses with a wave of her hand. "We can't verify anyone over the phone. That's not our policy." Of course, no such policy exists. but Derek nods along from his supervisory position, enabling the discrimination with his silence. The situation begins attracting more attention as other passengers waiting for the Atlanta flight start taking sides. A well-dressed businessman checks his expensive watch and complains loudly about the delay, clearly annoyed that his schedule is being disrupted by what he sees as unnecessary drama. An elderly black woman shakes her head in disgust, recognizing the familiar patterns of prejudice she's witnessed too many times in her 7 decades of life. A young white mother pulls her children closer, uncomfortable with the tension but unsure whether to speak up. Through their shared glances and subtle hand signals, the twins communicate in the wordless language that only identical siblings possess. Their phones buzz with silent text messages to each other. "She's digging her own grave," Jasmine types quickly. Jade responds, "Dad always said to let people show their true colors first." Despite their growing frustration, both girls remember their father's teachings about patience, documentation, and strategic thinking. They've been raised to be smart, not reactive. Karen escalates the situation by reaching for her radio and calling airport security. Her voice carries across the gate area as she reports suspicious passengers who are possibly using fraudulent documents to board the aircraft. 2 security officers begin walking toward gate B12, their presence causing a ripple of murmurs through the crowd. Karen whispers conspiratorially to them as they approach, her body language suggesting she's uncovered something significant rather than simply harassing 2 well-dressed teenagers. Security officers ask the twins to step aside for additional screening procedures. What begins as a private conversation quickly transforms into a public spectacle as airport security conducts an invasive search of the twins' belongings in full view of everyone waiting at gate B12. Every expensive item in their luggage becomes evidence in Karen's imaginary case against them. "How does a teenager afford a $3,000 laptop?" she asks loudly, holding up Jade's MacBook Pro as if it's contraband. The designer shoes, jewelry, and electronics are questioned, with the assumption that they must be stolen or purchased with dirty money. Karen orchestrates the humiliation with the skill of someone who's perfected the art of public shaming. She fake whispers just loud enough for everyone to hear. "I've seen this before. Rich kids using daddy's dirty money for drugs or whatever else." Her words are designed to plant seeds of suspicion in the minds of onlookers, turning potential allies into suspicious observers. The twins are separated and questioned individually, a tactic designed to find inconsistencies in their stories, even though they're telling the simple truth about visiting their grandmother. Jade's point of view reveals the internal struggle between maintaining dignity and fighting back tears as strangers rifle through her personal belongings. Every item she packed with care for her summer trip is now evidence in some imaginary crime. Meanwhile, Jasmine's perspective shows cold calculation behind her composed exterior. "She's giving us everything we need for the lawsuit," she thinks, mentally cataloging each violation of their civil rights. Their father taught them that documentation defeats discrimination, and Karen is providing plenty of evidence. Young flight attendant Keisha Washington watches the scene unfold with growing anger and helplessness. As a junior employee, she feels powerless to directly intervene, but her moral compass compels her to act. She discreetly activates her phone's camera, recording portions of the interaction while pretending to check her messages. Her footage will later prove crucial in the legal proceedings that follow. She's seen Karen's behavior before, but never anything this blatant or cruel. The digital age ensures that nothing happens in isolation anymore. Multiple passengers live stream the confrontation on various social media platforms, and hashtags related to the twins' humiliation begin trending within minutes. The story spreads across the internet faster than Karen can dig herself deeper into trouble, but she remains oblivious to the viral firestorm she's creating. Comments and shares multiply exponentially as people around the world witness the discrimination in real time. The twins endure the degradation of having their purses emptied, their shoes removed, and their bodies subjected to invasive pat-downs while Karen smirks with satisfaction. Maybe this will teach you not to fly above your station, she says with undisguised pleasure. Her words reveal the true motivation behind her actions. Not security concerns, but a desire to put these young black women in their place. The contrast becomes even more stark when a wealthy white teenager boards the same flight with similar expensive items and passes through without a single question. Jasmine finally reaches for her phone and says calmly, "I think it's time to make that call." In the privacy of the women's restroom, away from cameras and curious eyes, Jasmine makes a strategic phone call that will change everything. The conversation is brief and controlled, her voice carrying the calm authority she's inherited from her father. "It's happening again, but this time we have everything documented," she says into the phone. "No, don't come yet. Let them finish digging." The person on the other end clearly wants to intervene immediately, but Jasmine's wisdom prevails. Sometimes the best strategy is allowing your enemies to reveal themselves completely before you show your hand. Returning to the gate area, the twins share a moment of silent communication that speaks to years of facing discrimination together. They've learned through painful experience that reacting emotionally only gives their tormentors more ammunition. Their father raised them to be strategic thinkers, to document everything, and to seek justice through proper channels rather than emotional outbursts. This isn't their first encounter with prejudice, but it will be the most thoroughly documented and strategically handled. Keisha approaches them discreetly, offering her support and sharing her own recorded footage. "I've seen her discriminate against other minorities before, but never this openly," she whispers, glancing around to ensure Karen isn't watching. Her willingness to risk her job by supporting the twins speaks to her character and will later be recognized and rewarded. She provides her contact information and promises to testify if needed, becoming an unexpected ally in their fight for justice. The twins begin collecting contact information from supportive passengers who witnessed the discrimination. A traveling attorney discreetly hands them his business card, recognizing the legal implications of what he's observed. An older gentleman offers to serve as a witness, while a young mother expresses her outrage at the treatment the girls received. Each contact represents potential testimony in the legal proceedings that will follow. Meanwhile, Karen's power trip continues to escalate as she makes increasingly bold statements to Derek about teaching these girls their place and ensuring they understand they can't just waltz in here like they own everything. Derek, spineless as always, enables her behavior with phrases like, "You're just being thorough," and "better safe than sorry." His weakness and moral cowardice will soon cost him his career and reputation. The twins' social media followers, accumulated through their popular lifestyle and educational content, begin mobilizing as word spreads about their treatment. Their friend group launches advocacy campaigns, while the girls themselves maintain their strategic silence. They know that premature disclosure of their father's identity would rob them of the opportunity to fully expose the discrimination they're facing. Their internal monologue reveals their master plan. "Dad always said, give them enough rope to hang themselves. She's got enough rope for the whole airport now." A mysterious black SUV pulls up outside the terminal as Jasmine checks her phone and nods to Jade with satisfaction. Karen's authority complex reaches new heights as she makes the executive decision to ban the twins from the flight entirely. Her announcement over the gate's public address system crackles with self-righteous authority. Due to security concerns, passengers Jay Morrison and Jay Morrison have been removed from Flight 447 to Atlanta. The declaration sends shockwaves through the waiting area, with some passengers applauding her decisive action, while others voice their outrage at the obvious discrimination. The gate area erupts into competing factions as people take sides based on their own prejudices and experiences. Supporters of the twins demand explanations and threaten to file complaints, while Karen's enablers cheer her tough stance on security. The twins remain eerily calm throughout the chaos, continuing to document everything with their phones while maintaining the dignity their father taught them. Their composure in the face of such public humiliation only served to highlight the absurdity of Karen's behavior. Derek finally begins to show concern, but not for justice or fairness. His worry stems from potential backlash and corporate liability rather than moral outrage. He approaches Karen with nervous energy, suggesting they handle this situation more quietly to avoid further attention. But Karen has passed the point of no return, drunk on the power she feels from publicly humiliating these young women. "I'm not backing down to entitled brats," she declares, loud enough for everyone to hear. Airport police officers arrive in response to Karen's earlier calls, but their hesitation is obvious as they survey the scene. The crowd of witnesses, multiple cameras recording, and the composed demeanor of the accused create a situation that experienced officers recognize as potentially problematic. They've seen enough false allegations to approach such situations with caution, especially when the accusers seem more agitated than the accused. Captain Rodriguez emerges from the aircraft having heard the commotion, his pilot's uniform commanding respect from passengers, but his expression showing clear discomfort with the situation developing at his gate. Years of flying have taught him to read people, and nothing about these two young women suggests they pose any security threat. However, his position requires careful neutrality, and he chooses not to directly intervene, despite his obvious misgivings about Karen's behavior. Jasmine receives a text message that causes her to smile for the first time since this ordeal began. She discreetly shows the message to Jade, who nods approvingly. Their patience and strategic thinking are about to pay dividends as their carefully laid plans begin to unfold. The mysterious SUV outside is no coincidence, and the cavalry is about to arrive in a way that will shock everyone present. A man in an expensive suit approaches the gate counter, flanked by two professional-looking assistants, whose presence suggests serious corporate authority. Marcus Webb, Senior Vice President of Customer Relations for the airline, strides toward Gate B12 with the purposeful gait of someone accustomed to handling corporate crises. His expensive suit and obvious authority immediately shift the power dynamics at the gate, though Karen initially misinterprets his arrival as validation of her actions. She straightens her shoulders and prepares to explain her thorough security protocols to what she assumes is a supportive superior who will commend her vigilance. Webb's assistants immediately began damage control procedures, quietly collecting statements from witnesses and reviewing the multiple phone recordings of the incident. Their professional efficiency and serious demeanor suggest this is far from routine customer service, but Karen remains oblivious to the gravity of her situation. She begins explaining her rationale to Webb, detailing how she protected the airline from potential fraud and maintained proper security standards in the face of suspicious passengers. The twins observe Webb's changing expression with knowing satisfaction as he pieces together the full scope of what occurred. His professional composure begins cracking as he reviews footage from multiple passenger phones, each video providing another angle of Karen's discriminatory behavior. Years of corporate crisis management have taught him to recognize potential disasters, and this situation represents a perfect storm of bad publicity, legal liability, and moral failure. Derek's survival instincts finally kick in as he realizes the serious nature of Webb's investigation. His attempts to distance himself from Karen's decisions ring hollow as Webb's assistants pull employment records and review the chain of command that allowed this situation to escalate. "I was just supporting my employee," Derek stammers. "I didn't know she was going to—" But his words trail off as he realizes that ignorance and cowardice are not valid defenses for enabling discrimination. Webb takes immediate control of the situation, his corporate training kicking in as he attempts damage control. His profuse apologies to the twins are sincere but also calculated to limit legal liability. He announces that the airline will conduct an immediate and thorough investigation, though everyone present understands that the investigation's outcome has already been determined by the overwhelming evidence of wrongdoing. The transformation in Karen's demeanor becomes visible as she begins to understand that Webb is not there to support her actions. Her confident posture wilts as she realizes that her moment of perceived triumph is actually the beginning of her professional downfall. The whispers and phone calls among Webb's team create an atmosphere of crisis management that even she cannot misinterpret. Webb receives an urgent phone call that drains the color from his face as he listens to the voice on the other end. His assistant leans in to whisper something that makes his expression shift from concern to absolute terror. "Sir," the assistant says urgently, "we have a problem. Do you know who their father is?" The revelation hits Webb like a physical blow as his assistant provides details about the twins' family connection. His face transforms from professional concern to absolute panic as he realizes the magnitude of the situation his airline now faces. Emergency protocols, typically reserved for VIP incidents, are immediately activated as Webb instructs his team to begin damage control procedures that suggest this case has national implications rather than local customer service issues. Karen continues her oblivious complaints about the special treatment these girls are receiving, completely missing the signs of corporate panic surrounding her. "This is exactly the entitled behavior I was trying to prevent," she declares to anyone within earshot. Her inability to read the room becomes almost comical as security details and corporate executives mobilize around what she still perceives as routine passenger screening. Her pride and prejudice have blinded her to the approaching storm. The mysterious black SUV arrives at the gate's ground-level entrance, and its occupants emerge with the precision of a well-rehearsed operation. A security detail exits first, followed by a tall, distinguished black man whose perfectly tailored suit and commanding presence immediately draws attention from everyone in the terminal. Passengers begin recognizing him and whispering excitedly as realization dawns about who they're witnessing. Jade and Jasmine remain seated calmly, watching their father approach with quiet pride rather than dramatic relief. They don't run to him or create unnecessary scenes because their upbringing has taught them that true power doesn't need theatrical display. Their composed reaction speaks volumes about their family's values and the quality of their character. This restraint will serve them well in the legal proceedings that follow. Karen finally notices the commotion and the obvious wealth and authority radiating from the approaching figure. Her confident expression begins wavering as she observes the deferential behavior of airport security and the obvious panic among airline executives. For the first time since this ordeal began, doubt creeps into her voice as she asks Derek, "Who is that man?" His face goes pale as recognition dawns. Webb practically sprints to intercept the distinguished gentleman, sweat visible on his forehead despite the air conditioning. His urgent whispers are interrupted by a calm, authoritative voice that cuts through the chaos like a knife through butter. "I'm here for my daughters," the man states simply, his words carrying the weight of absolute authority and barely contained fury. Derek's response to Karen's question drops like a bomb in the suddenly quiet gate area. "Oh God, that's Federal Judge Marcus Morrison." Judge Marcus Morrison approaches Gate B12 with the quiet authority that comes from 15 years on the federal bench and a lifetime of fighting for civil rights. His presence commands immediate respect from everyone present except Karen, who is still processing the implications of his identity. As a former civil rights attorney turned federal judge and recently mentioned on the Supreme Court's shortlist, Morrison represents the kind of legal and political power that can reshape institutions with a single decision. The twins rise gracefully to embrace their father, their reunion notable for its dignity rather than drama. "Hi, Daddy," Jasmine says calmly. "We handled it just like you taught us." There are no tears, no theatrics, just the quiet satisfaction of students who have learned their lessons well. Their composure throughout this ordeal now makes perfect sense. They are the daughters of a man who has spent his career teaching people how to fight injustice with intelligence rather than emotion. Morrison's voice carries the measured tone of someone accustomed to courtrooms and congressional hearings as he addresses the crowd. I've been watching the live streams from my office, he states matter-of-factly. Quite educational. His eyes sweep across the gate area, noting every face, every camera, every witness who will remember this moment. The weight of his judicial authority transforms the atmosphere from airport drama to something approaching a legal proceeding. Karen's world crumbles as the full scope of her mistake becomes clear. She has just publicly humiliated the daughters of one of the most powerful judges in America, a man whose landmark discrimination cases have set legal precedents and whose upcoming Supreme Court consideration makes him one of the most influential legal minds in the country. Her face contorts with the realization that her moment of petty power has destroyed her career, and possibly her life. Webb approaches Morrison with the deference typically reserved for heads of state, his corporate crisis management training completely inadequate for this situation. Judge Morrison, he begins, his voice cracking slightly, I want to assure you that we will handle this matter with the utmost seriousness and thoroughness. Morrison's response is measured but carries undertones of judicial authority. I assume you'll want to handle this internally before it becomes a federal case. The threat is subtle but unmistakable. Cooperate or face the full weight of federal civil rights enforcement. Morrison addresses the crowd of onlookers and passengers with the gravity befitting his position. My daughters chose not to reveal their connection to me because they wanted to be treated like any other passengers. Instead, they were subjected to treatment that no child, regardless of their parentage, should ever endure. His words carry the weight of legal precedent and moral authority, transforming this incident from personal grievance to civil rights violation. Karen attempts a desperate apology, but Morrison raises his hand with judicial finality. Your words have been recorded by dozens of witnesses. Your apologies are noted but insufficient. Derek tries to hide behind airline policy, but Morrison cuts him off with surgical precision. I've reviewed your actual policies online while driving here. None of them authorized racial profiling or public humiliation. His legal mind has already begun building the case that will follow. Morrison's phone rings, his Supreme Court clerk calling to inform him that the twins' situation has already reached the highest levels of government. Civil rights organizations are mobilizing, congressional offices are asking questions, and the Department of Justice is taking notice. The judge informs his daughters that they have a choice: pursue this matter privately through corporate channels, or make it a public civil rights case that could reshape airline industry practices nationwide. The twins exchange a look that communicates volumes before Jade speaks for both of them. We choose justice over comfort, Daddy. Make it public. Morrison nods approvingly as he reaches into his briefcase and produces an official-looking document. Karen's hands shake as he hands it to her with judicial formality. You're being served with notice of federal civil rights violations, Morrison announces, his voice carrying across the terminal. Court proceedings will begin Monday morning. Within hours of the incident, the airline's stock price plummets 12% as investors react to the viral videos and breaking news coverage of the discrimination case. Emergency board meetings convene as executives realize they're facing a perfect storm of legal liability, public relations disaster, and potential federal investigation. The Morrison name carries weight in legal circles, and his judicial connections ensure that this case will receive scrutiny at the highest levels of government. Karen Mitchell and Derek Williams are immediately suspended pending investigation, their access cards deactivated and their uniforms confiscated before they can leave the airport. Corporate investigators discover that Karen has 3 previous discrimination complaints in her personnel file, incidents that were quietly buried by weak management rather than properly addressed. Derek's supervisory role makes him equally culpable, his 20-year career ending because he chose comfort over courage when it mattered most. Judge Morrison recuses himself from any legal proceedings due to obvious conflict of interest, but his extensive network of civil rights attorneys mobilizes immediately to represent his daughters. Top legal minds offer pro bono representation, viewing this case as an opportunity to set precedents that will protect future travelers from discrimination. The twins become inadvertent symbols of dignified resistance, their composed handling of the situation inspiring countless others who have faced similar treatment. Corporate internal emails begin leaking within days, revealing systemic bias in hiring practices, training programs, and customer service protocols. Whistleblowers emerge from within the airline with similar stories spanning years of ignored discrimination complaints and buried incident reports. The Federal Aviation Administration announces a comprehensive investigation into industry-wide discrimination practices, with this case serving as the catalyst for broader reform. Webb implements immediate policy changes in a desperate attempt to limit damage. Mandatory bias training for all customer-facing employees, diverse oversight committees, anonymous reporting systems for discrimination incidents, and body cameras for all gate agents. However, these reactive measures prove insufficient to stem the tide of negative publicity and legal consequences flowing from years of institutional negligence. The twins' lifestyle content channel explodes from 50,000 to 2 million subscribers overnight as people flock to hear their perspective on the incident. Rather than exploiting their newfound fame for personal gain, they use their platform responsibly to educate viewers about civil rights, proper documentation of discrimination, and the importance of strategic responses to injustice. Their measured approach wins respect from across the political spectrum. Karen's personal life disintegrates as rapidly as her professional career. Her ex-husband uses the viral incident to strengthen his custody case, arguing that her documented racist behavior creates an unsafe environment for their children. Her social media accounts are flooded with criticism and death threats, forcing her to delete all online presence. Job applications in customer service are immediately rejected once potential employers discover her identity. Derek faces personal bankruptcy as his supervisory role makes him personally liable for enabling discrimination under federal civil rights laws. His attempts to claim ignorance fail when investigators uncover emails showing he received multiple warnings about Karen's behavior, but chose to ignore them rather than confront the situation. His cowardice costs him his pension, his reputation, and his marriage. Congressional hearings are scheduled within weeks, with the Transportation Secretary announcing comprehensive reviews of airline discrimination policies nationwide. The Morrison case becomes a catalyst for legislative action that has been stalled for years, providing the political momentum needed to pass stronger civil rights protections for travelers. Keisha Washington, the flight attendant who supported the twins, receives promotion to head of customer relations and becomes the face of the airline's reformed approach to passenger services. Her courage in recording the incident and supporting the victims, despite potential career consequences, is recognized and rewarded, sending a clear message about the company's new value. Legal settlements reach 8 figures as the airline seeks to avoid lengthy court proceedings that would generate more negative publicity. The twins donate significant portions of their settlement to civil rights organizations and scholarship funds, ensuring that their experience creates lasting positive change rather than merely personal enrichment. Morrison uses his judicial platform carefully but effectively to speak about systemic racism in commercial settings, influencing lower court decisions and setting legal precedents that will protect future victims of discrimination. His upcoming Supreme Court consideration gains additional support from civil rights organizations impressed by his family's handling of this crisis. The case becomes required study material in law schools across the country, with students analyzing the strategic approach taken by the Morrison family and the legal precedents established by the subsequent court proceedings. Future civil rights attorneys study this case as a masterclass in documented resistance to institutional discrimination. Karen receives notice of her termination hearing, but there's more. Federal criminal charges for civil rights violations are being filed by the Department of Justice. Karen Mitchell's termination hearing transforms into a media circus as news vans line the street outside the airline's corporate headquarters. She arrives with a court-appointed public defender, unable to afford private counsel after her husband successfully froze their joint assets during divorce proceedings. The woman who once wielded petty power over airline passengers now faces the full weight of corporate and federal justice systems aligned against her. The evidence presented against Karen is overwhelming and undeniable. Multiple high-definition videos capture her discriminatory behavior from various angles, while dozens of witness statements corroborate the twins' account of events. Her defense attorney's attempts to claim she was just following security protocols crumble when airline executives testify that no such protocols exist and that Karen's behavior violated every customer service standard in their manual. Karen's social media history becomes Exhibit A in the discrimination case, with investigators uncovering years of racist memes, discriminatory comments, and support for extremist groups. Screenshots of her posts reveal a pattern of prejudice that makes her treatment of the Morrison twins appear as part of a broader ideology rather than an isolated incident. The airline's attorneys appear mortified as each new piece of evidence demonstrates the depth of their liability. Derek's separate hearing reveals the full extent of his complicity in enabling discrimination. Email records show he received mandatory sensitivity training warnings about Karen's behavior but chose to ignore them rather than engage in difficult conversations. His testimony reveals a pattern of moral cowardice that enabled Karen's discrimination to escalate unchecked. His 20-year career ends not with retirement benefits, but with termination for cause and permanent unemployability in management roles. Federal charges are filed against both defendants under civil rights statutes that carry potential prison sentences. Karen's case attracts hate crime enhancements due to her documented pattern of discriminatory behavior spanning multiple incidents and victims. The Department of Justice views this case as an opportunity to send a clear message about federal enforcement of civil rights laws in commercial settings. Karen's public statement outside the courthouse becomes her final act of self-destruction. Standing before a wall of cameras and microphones, she claims to be the real victim in this situation and suggests that the Morrison twins played the race card to gain unfair advantage. Her words are immediately broadcast nationwide, further destroying any remaining public sympathy and providing additional evidence of her discriminatory mindset. The Morrison twins' response to Karen's courthouse statement demonstrates the class and intelligence that has characterized their handling of this entire situation. Speaking calmly to reporters, they focus on facts rather than emotions, pointing out the documented evidence of discrimination while expressing hope that this case will prevent similar treatment of other families. Their composed rebuttal goes viral, creating a stark contrast between their dignity and Karen's desperation. Karen loses her home to foreclosure as legal bills mount and employment opportunities evaporate. Her marriage officially ends when her husband gains full custody of their children, with the judge citing her public display of racist behavior as evidence of unfitness for shared custody. She becomes unemployable in any customer service role, as background checks immediately reveal her national notoriety for discrimination. Derek receives probation and community service rather than prison time, but his career in corporate management is permanently destroyed. He becomes a cautionary tale featured in diversity training programs across multiple industries. His failure to address obvious discrimination serving as an example of how moral cowardice enables systemic injustice. The airline announces sweeping industry-wide reforms that will fundamentally change air travel procedures for addressing discrimination complaints. The Morrison case triggers unprecedented transformation across the airline industry as carriers scramble to avoid similar legal and public relations disasters. Airlines implement sophisticated bias reporting applications that allow passengers to immediately document and report discriminatory treatment, with complaints automatically forwarded to both corporate headquarters and federal oversight agencies. Anonymous complaint systems ensure that employees can report discriminatory behavior by colleagues without fear of retaliation. Airport security receives comprehensive protocol updates specifically addressing racial profiling, with mandatory monthly sensitivity training replacing the previous annual requirements that proved inadequate. Body camera requirements for all customer service interactions become industry standard, providing objective documentation that protects both passengers and employees from false allegations. The footage becomes invaluable for training purposes and legal proceedings. The twins' advocacy efforts lead directly to federal legislation known as the Equal Skies Act, requiring airlines to report all discrimination incidents to the Department of Transportation within 24 hours. The legislation includes provisions for passenger Bill of Rights enforcement and establishes federal oversight of airline diversity training programs. Congressional hearings feature testimony from the Morrison twins, whose articulate presentation influences lawmakers across party lines. Corporate diversity initiatives expand far beyond tokenistic hiring practices to address actual cultural change within airline organizations. Customer service positions now require certification in bias recognition and de-escalation techniques, with ongoing education requirements for license renewal. Performance evaluations include specific metrics related to respectful treatment of diverse passengers, making discrimination a career-limiting behavior. Social media monitoring systems alert airlines to discrimination incidents in real time, preventing the cover-ups and delayed responses that previously characterized corporate handling of such situations. Rapid response teams deploy immediately when incidents are detected, providing support to affected passengers and beginning investigation procedures before situations escalate to legal proceedings. The Morrison twins establish a foundation supporting young people facing discrimination in transportation, education, and employment settings. Their platform reaches millions of followers who learn about civil rights history, documentation techniques, and strategic approaches to fighting injustice. Educational content featuring their experience becomes required viewing in schools across the country. Judge Morrison's subsequent judicial opinions increasingly reference the need for equal treatment in commercial settings, influencing lower court decisions nationwide and establishing legal precedents that strengthen civil rights enforcement. His upcoming Supreme Court consideration receives broad support from organizations impressed by his family's principled approach to this crisis. International airlines adopt similar anti-discrimination policies, recognizing the global nature of civil rights movements and the power of social media accountability to cross national borders. The Morrison case becomes a study in crisis management programs worldwide, demonstrating how individual incidents can catalyze systemic change. 2 years later, the twins returned to Chicago O'Hare International Airport for a very different reason. 2 years after their humiliating experience at Gate B12, Jasmine and Jade Morrison returned to Chicago O'Hare as keynote speakers for the airport's first annual Civil Rights Recognition Ceremony. The irony is not lost on anyone present, as these young women, once denied boarding by prejudiced employees, now address hundreds of airline executives, government officials, and civil rights leaders in the same terminal where they faced discrimination. Keisha Washington, now serving as head of customer relations for the airline, personally greets the twins at the VIP entrance. Her promotion from junior flight attendant to executive leadership represents the kind of institutional change that can emerge from crisis, when organizations choose reform over defensiveness. The gate where their discrimination occurred now features a permanent educational display about equal treatment and human dignity in transportation. Karen Mitchell works the breakfast shift at a fast food restaurant across town, her fall from airline authority to minimum wage employment serving as a daily reminder of how hatred ultimately destroys the person who harbors it. She watches the twins' success from afar through news coverage, a living example of how prejudice becomes its own punishment. Her criminal conviction for civil rights violations ensures that customer service careers remain permanently closed to her. Derek Williams completed his court-mandated community service working with civil rights organizations, an experience that forced him to confront the consequences of his moral cowardice. He now speaks at corporate training programs about the personal and professional costs of failing to address discrimination. His testimony more powerful because it comes from someone who lost everything by choosing silence over courage. His transformation from enabler to advocate demonstrates that even cowardice can be redeemed through genuine accountability. The twins, now college freshmen at Harvard and Yale respectively, have maintained their dignity and focus throughout their journey from victims to advocates. Their scholarship fund has provided educational opportunities for hundreds of students who might otherwise have been denied access to quality education. They speak regularly at universities and conferences, sharing their experience while encouraging others to document injustice and seek systematic solutions rather than personal revenge. Judge Morrison presides over the swearing-in ceremony for the airport's first Director of Diversity and Inclusion, a position created in direct response to the discrimination his daughters faced. The new director is herself a former victim of airline discrimination who now works within the system to create change from the inside. Her appointment symbolizes the transformation of pain into purpose that characterizes the Morrison family's approach to justice. The twins' final video about their airport experience focuses not on revenge or bitterness, but on the transformative power of standing up for principles while maintaining one's humanity and dignity. They emphasize that discrimination thrives in silence and darkness, but withers under the light of truth and the power of documented resistance. Their message resonates with millions of viewers who have faced similar treatment but lacked the resources or knowledge to seek justice. Standing once again at Gate B12, the twins reflect on their journey from victims to advocates, from powerless teenagers to influential voices for civil rights. They return not as damaged individuals seeking closure, but as confident young women who transformed their pain into purpose and their humiliation into hope for others facing similar challenges. Their presence in this space represents more than personal triumph. It symbolizes the possibility that individual acts of courage and strategic resistance can create institutional change that protects countless others from similar treatment. Do you think Karen's punishment fits the crime? What changes would you make to prevent discrimination like this from happening to other families? The Morrison twins want you to know that discrimination still occurs every day in airports, schools, workplaces, and communities across America. But you have power. The power to speak up, document truth, and demand accountability from institutions that should serve everyone equally. The twins encourage viewers to download bias reporting applications, support civil rights organizations financially and through volunteer work, and practice active allyship in their daily lives. Don't just witness discrimination, Jasmine tells the camera. Document it, report it, and support the victims however you can. Jade adds, change doesn't happen overnight, but it starts with each of us refusing to stay silent when we witness injustice being done to others. The impact of their case continues reverberating through the airline industry and beyond. Discrimination complaints at airlines implementing Morrison protocols have decreased by 40%, though incidents still occur at rates that demand continued vigilance and advocacy. The Twins Foundation has expanded to address discrimination in hotels, restaurants, and retail establishments, with their documented approach serving as a model for victims seeking justice. Their next investigation reveals what happens when a Black family is refused service at an exclusive restaurant until staff discovers they own the entire building. Subscribe to see how quiet ownership can create the loudest justice when prejudice meets property rights. The Twins' upcoming content will demonstrate how economic power, properly wielded, can dismantle discriminatory practices more effectively than any legal proceeding. Statistics appear on screen showing that while progress has been made, discrimination incidents still occur thousands of times each year across various industries. The Morrison case proved that individual resistance can create systemic change, but sustained effort from allies and advocates remains essential to protect civil rights for all Americans. Their message resonates clearly. Change doesn't happen overnight, but it starts with each of us refusing to stay silent when we witness injustice. Dignity is not determined by others' prejudice. It's revealed by how you respond to it.